All right, so I'll call the meeting to order. Do you have any additions, deletions from the agenda?
Yes, I would like to add an action item that's related to the draft audit. I would like the board to consider a deficit note to cover the cost of the deficit. And I'll help you word it when it comes along, but it'll be tasking Jody, Oliver, and me with reaching out to 3 local banks for a deficit note in relation to the audit.
All right.
And this has been discussed with the Finance Committee already.
I have 2 items that I'd just like to add. One is just like an update on where we are with Kiwanis, even if it's a 2 words, they're not back to us yet. And the other would be just where are we on giving us some information on the academic arm? Either Jeremy, maybe you can give us something, or Brian, of the COVID money.
Sure.
All right. So bring that down here. Add that into discussion items. Perfect. Anything else? Nothing? Okay, minutes from May 10th. Any questions, comments? Nothing? All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 10th.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Questions, comments from the public? All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are passed. Okay, so let's get right to discussion items, and we'll start with the fiscal year 20 audit.
Okay, Jody Oliver is going to lead that part of the discussion. I do want to recognize that our representative from our auditing firm, Bonnie Dow, is on the call. She presented to the Finance Committee last week. Jody's going to walk us through the audit with some level of detail. Bonnie is here to answer any specific questions that Jody might not be able to answer for you. I'm going to turn it over to Jody for this portion of the program.
Thanks, Brian. So first of all, I do want to thank the auditing firm and especially Bonnie for working with me this year through this audit. It was my first audit and it definitely proved to be a bit challenging. I think the hardest part is not having the history with St. Johnsbury School District. And then the second part of it, of course, was COVID-19. In a normal year, we would have met in person and Bonnie and I probably would have been able to work through a lot of things together. And unfortunately, we never even met in person. We did all of this through Zoom and we had to go back and forth several times. Bonnie would have questions and I would have to dig up answers, and it definitely prolonged the process. So that was part of why we're getting back to you so late in the game this year. I'm going to go over the 2 biggest highlights from the audit, and I think we did include a copy of the audit with the board report and such. So if you have that up and have any questions throughout, just let me know. The biggest thing, of course, is that we are going to be left with a deficit. And I wanted to go over the reasons for that. And so what happened is going back from 2015 to really 2020, there were receivables that were not collected. So they were earmarked as that we were going to receive them, and they were supposed to be being looked into. And I'm discovering as we're going through the audit that there are really things that I'm not familiar with, and I did a lot of investigating. And unfortunately, with so many just turnaround at different places, most people that I contacted had no idea what I was talking about or couldn't give me any information. And so it was very discouraging. But after talking to Bonnie and really looking at these things, I really felt that these are not things that we're going to be able to collect on at this point. And if I feel like we should go down through the list. So one of the biggest amounts was $114,000, and that's from special education funding in FY18 that was not received. So it's my understanding that it looks like it was possibly claiming for items that were not allowable. Kara Lufkin, who's our special education director, is going to look a little bit more into that just so we can have some more detail. But at this point, I mean, the AOE is not sending us any money that I am aware of or that she is aware of for these items. So again, a little bit of sort of guessing on this, but special education is a tough one. And, you know, we put in for reimbursements for several items, and sometimes it is discovered that they were not allowable. So I'm thinking that that's probably what happened. And again, that was a big chunk of it. There are several other amounts on here that are tuition related. So it looks like FY 15, 16, 17, all some amounts. There was some Victory tuition, Walcott tuition, and Essex Caledonia. So these would be students that are coming into our school that are in K through 8th grade. And they fall into, like I said, those smaller towns that don't have schools, so they have school choice. This year, for instance, we have some kids coming in from Kirby, and we have invoiced them and they've paid that amount. So again, without having the history, this was a really tough one. I couldn't find any notes on this. I couldn't find anybody to really verify. I think during the finance committee meeting, it was mentioned that it was possible that these were maybe some private payers or some people that had like a couple of different addresses. And it would appear to me at this point in time that something that goes back as far as 2015, 16, 17, I don't know how I would fight that without having any information or proof or anything at my fingertips that would say to me that I could take this any further. Again, that was unfortunate. So that's like a total of, there's another like $50,000 right there, which again, it's just very unfortunate. It looks like there were things that were not followed up on that maybe should have been. The other one is there was an estimated, a possible overpayment of St. Johnsbury. Sometimes this happens. There's an adjustment that happens. The common level of appraisal is changed. There's housing things that change. There's usually a little bit of an underpayment. Again, this amount was like around $10,000. I couldn't find any proof of this or any notes saying that anybody owed us this money from St. Johnsbury. It didn't indicate to me that this was any money that was going to be coming in. Again, this was from FY18. When you're talking that many years back, people have reconciled their invoices by now. They have paid out everything they are planning to pay out. And I don't see this as any kind of income that's going to be coming in. So after consulting with Bonnie and talking to Dr. Ricca, and then of course talking to the finance committee, I think we're all in agreement that I would like to really start fresh and would like to say that this money is not coming in. And unfortunately, it leaves us with a $241,000 deficit. And that's, it's extremely unfortunate. And it's nothing that I wanted to see, certainly not on my first year. Again, doing my first audit on invoices and income that I'm not familiar with was tough, but I feel like going forward, I would like a fresh start. And so I would like to take care of these amounts so that we can start a clean slate going forward. So that's the big one. And I think when I came on, Brian was kind of talking to you about what we're considering to rectify that amount. So we'll vote on that, I assume, in a little bit.
Jody, can you
Yep.
pause there? Let's see if there's questions from the board
Absolutely.
about this or comments from the members of the finance committee.
Yes.
And please recall, Bonnie is on our call and happy to answer any questions about the specificity of our situation if anyone is so inclined.
Absolutely.
I don't think I saw it in the board packet. Am I correct?
It might have been added late, Mark.
Let me look now, Mark. Hold on. It's there.
I think we realized, yeah, it wasn't in there.
It is there.
You spelled out 165,000 of the 240. What else is there?
Let's see, there was 114,000 in the special education funding.
Right.
20,000 for victory tuition, 40,000, I should say. One is from FY16, one FY17.
40 from Victory?
Walcott tuition was the 10,000.
Right.
Essex was around 8, just under 8.
So call it 60.
Yeah, and then the overpayment to St. Johnsbury 10. Oh, you know what I didn't mention was from the deficit from FY19, 52,000.
That we knew about.
We did know about that one.
Right.
Yeah, didn't we put that in the fiscal the next year's budget?
That, yes.
Deficit item?
Yes, technically, yes. We did know that one.
But I thought we made up for that in the next year's budget.
That is in this year's budget, actually. So we should be making up for it this year. Yes.
Okay, so so then in reality, it's about 185,000 in deficit.
Can I ask, Bonnie, would you be kind enough to unmute yourself and explain the difference, the fact that we knew about the FY19 amount and where that is going to fall in our budgets, please?
If you guys have built into your budget in FY21 to recover the deficit from FY19, you could lower the amount that you're asking them to obtain a deficit reduction note for.
Okay.
Through FY21, if Jody's predictions are not when you're going to be able to recover that full amount, you may want to adjust accordingly. I personally haven't looked at any of your budget to actual reports for F1 yet, so Jody would be able to answer that more than I can. But if you were to back that out, it would be about 188,000 would be the remaining amount you would potentially be looking to recover.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Dean, do you know anything about the town, for that matter, of the tuitions from the towns that never paid?
I'm going to call on my memory, which is going to go back a ways. If I remember correctly, there were a bunch of kids where their residence was in question. It appeared that their residence was actually in Victory. Victory claimed that they weren't in Victory, but rather in St. J. And so there was a continued debate. We had tasked the previous business manager with figuring that out and solving it and let us know if it continues. I believe the same was the case for the Walk. I don't remember the Essex, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But I believe the same. But I believe the Walcott and the Victory were both people with questionable residencies. So Victory, we're not paying it for people that don't live here, and the same with Walcott. But like I said, I can't tell you about the Essex. I had a question for you while I'm online. Is the amount that SPED theoretically owed us, is that for extraordinary services above the 50,000? At the time, we had a $50,000 mark where if a kiddo went above a $50,000 expense,
Sure.
I know that there was a year or two where the filing was late for that money. Is that what that SPED is?
We don't have an exact beat on it yet, Dean, because from F18, that year ended, as you all know, for fiscal years June 30 of FY18. So Tara is going to start to look into to see candidly if it's a documentation issue, as in we, the district, didn't send enough documentation to support it. We were denied funding because the AOE determined the child should, there could be reasons for their denial. I don't know as to what that is.
I believe, and Karen could be wrong, and I'm very happy with that. I believe what happened was that the request for extraordinary cost above the $50,000 at that time did not get filed in time, and so an extension was asked for. and it was initially granted, but it had a cap on it. And I suspect what happened was that cap got run over again. But
Okay.
that's again, memory, and that's fallible.
Yep. So we're at just, for the board, we're asking Kara to take a look at this. She has a better sense of the reason for the denial. She will write something up and come back to the board and share her understanding of the situation.
I think, one of the things that I'd emphasize here, especially in support of Jody, is this is stuff she inherited. It's not stuff she created.
Yeah, no doubt. No, I think it's important to know the why of some of these so we don't make the same mistakes again, because it can be considered okay to make a mistake, but certainly never okay to make a mistake twice.
We went through that.
Let's make sure we understand.
We went through that pretty rigorously at the finance committee. That
Yeah.
Then we're really not.
Yeah, that's no good.
Here, I just, if we're talking about expenses from FY 15, 16, 17, we have audits every year. Why is this just showing up now?
Bonnie, can you speak to that?
I can. It's not just shown. It was recorded as revenue in there that the receivable is recorded, and it was included in the audits that I performed. In FY 15, the only item on there was that small amount of tuition from Wolcott. That didn't look inappropriate at that point. Talking to the superintendent at the time and business manager at the time, it appeared it would be collected the following year. In 16, we added on one victory. In 17, we added another one for victory. My recollection from conversations I had with the business manager at the time was that it was being disputed. During the FY 19 audit, I remember having conversations with the business manager about the sped money that still had not come in. She was still emailing the state at that point while I was actually in her office. And she was pretty adamant that she was going to be able to collect the money from the state. So nowhere up until the point of the FY 19 audit being finished did it appear to me that some of these items may not be collected. The tuition ones were getting a little bit older, but were much smaller than the sped money that was in question. So we didn't propose writing them off or restating anything for those amounts at that point. When I brought it to Jody's attention this year, she wasn't really aware of any of the history, not having been there before, and couldn't find a whole lot of documentation from the previous business manager to pick up and try to carry it forward from where she had left off. I believe at some point after I finished the FY 19 audit and the end of FY 20, they did notify the business manager that the sped money would not be received, but she didn't relay that information to me before she left and before I spoke to Jody about it. So this is the year that we've addressed it, but it definitely was included in my work papers and in the audit and items that I was looking at for revenue. If Kara's not able to find enough on the SPED information, I can attempt to go back to my FY 18 audit files, which I don't have where I am tonight.
I was going to connect the two of you just in case.
Yeah.
I know that Kara's just going to begin some initial conversations. We discussed it at our leadership team meeting today, and she's happy to. And I did say, if need be, I knew you would be incredibly helpful and happy to connect and just work through it with her to point her in the right direction.
Yeah, and I do know on the tuition ones, there were conversations I had with the prior business manager or superintendent about it being in dispute, and a resolution hadn't been reached every time I asked about it. I also might have something about the overpayment to St. J in my FY 18 work papers that I could try to dig up if you're still interested in looking into that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll ask a question or make a comment at this point, Bonnie. This is Abby. This is a great sort of example of the importance of fiduciary responsibility and how important it's going to be to look at these audits moving forward. because it does sound like it was a lot of little things until 2020, when it became very clear that sped money wasn't going to come in, that this snowballed into a significant issue on our balance sheet. Because as explained to us, we need to as I look at this, it's very important to get this money back on our books. Because right now we're not aligned with where our bank account actually is. And so that's problematic. So we need to address this. We do have a fairly good idea of what an interest rate would be on this, which is low. And so we can be thankful for that. And so so there's going to be a recommendation from the finance committee and from our auditors that we get this money back on the books. Is this okay, Brian, to make the solution kind of at this point?
Absolutely. Okay. Of course.
Okay, so it's been recommended to us that we take out a bank loan in this amount, which I just did the quick calculations, which I don't want to be held to on this because this is not but I believe we're looking at, all right, hold on. A bank loan in the amount of $171,671.35, which is the 224,264.65, which is identified in the audit, minus the 52,50.93, which was addressed in the budget for this year. Does that sound right to the parties involved? Around about. So what we're going to ask now is, of that amount, we're going to ask Dr. Ricca and Jody to go out to a couple of different banks in the area and look at a 3-year loan so that we can balance this money out over the next 3 years so that it's not the same budget hit. We're going to, most importantly, we're going to put this money back on our balance sheet. And it does look like there's a slight miscalculation in terms of about $3,000 difference. So again, we're gonna dial this in. That's the whole point. We want to dial it in. Right. We want to find exactly the right amount, and then we're going to have to go and we're going to put this money back on our balance sheet, similar to as we do as the tax anticipation loan, which is at 1.75%. This is an unfortunate situation, but it's not indicative, I think, of our current leadership team and our current finance team, although it was identified in the audit, which is not, I think, necessarily the fault, certainly of our new finance director, but that we may look at a more robust finance office. And that's something that I think the finance committee needs to look at very much in the next year is, and as we look at the next budget, I'm particularly interested in looking at whether or not we need another person in the office to make sure that follow-up, I mean, at the tune of, $100,000 a year of follow-up, that position easily could pay for itself, as well as making sure that the additional ESSER money coming in is well administered, because the amount of grant money is only going to continue to increase.
Abby, could I make could I offer one a suggestion that you offer the motion not to exceed the maximum amount of the unassigned deficit, which is currently 241,018.
Okay, so, and then I have your commitment to address the 52 and then go from
absolutely.
there.
Yes, and that we will follow up. We will document where we are with the 52, and when we have a recommendation for a bank, we will have that final number dialed in. But I would just, to be safe, it would make me feel a little bit better if we said up to the final unassigned deficit amount as documented in the audit.
Which is the hardest number we have, or the numbers.
Correct. Correct. Okay, correct. Yeah. Yes. Other than that, I appreciate what you said. Yes.
So what are other options other than asking for a bank note? And why is that the option that's being presented as a result of the finance committee's meeting?
Because the alternative would be to build the full amount into the next year's budget. This allows us to spread it over 3 years as opposed to absorbing it into the next year's budget. And it has to be accounted for somewhere. And
does it have to be an all or none? Like, does it have to be all in a bank note or all build up in the next 1 year after this has been accumulating for 5 years?
So the idea here, and Bonnie, if I go off the rails here, please correct me. Normally the audit is completed before your current year budget is finalized. So for example, if this audit was completed in December/January, we would at that time have to have made an adjustment to our FY22 budget to account for this deficit. Because, and due to COVID and due to the fact that Jody was brand new, we did not complete our audit until just recently. So because this is listed on the books as a deficit now, we do, it is in the best interest of our district to clear the decks in a way, from my perspective, that is least impactful to our community. And so that's why we recommended to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee is recommending to you a deficit note.
It was noted by the senior member of the firm who did the audit that this is a standard accounting practice and is often the way that large municipalities or entities deal with such things. And we could, there's no reason the board could not say 2 to 3 years. I mean, it was recommended to us that we could span it to 2 or 3 years. Our leadership, Dr. Ricca and Jody have assured us that this is not going to happen again. And that our books are going to be like, part of this is to get this all in the books and to move forward with a clean slate. So because we feel confident that that's not going to happen again, that 3 years just sort of gives a little more flexibility, but it could easily be 2. But I think the important thing is to get it off, like to get our books straightened out. And we do know that our tax anticipation loan came in at 1.75%. So it's still an interest rate. It's still some money that we have to build into our budget, but it's not, we theoretically could lock in a fairly low interest rate.
May I ask one more?
Of course.
I appreciate that the current leadership team is working on this. And in many ways, it sounds like inheriting and doing their best. What are some of the procedures that would change to ensure that something like this didn't happen again? Or like moving forward, what happens if there was a sudden change of leadership members? Like, are you developing some ideas to help open those lines of communication for succession, not just current situation?
So I can tell you that this fell in our lap on Wednesday. Linda, was that when we were made aware that we were? So on Wednesday, it was brought to my attention that a neighboring an NEK supervisory union had sent us a tuition bill for students who had attended in the first semester, and there was a part of the bill that was missing. Linda brought it to my attention immediately. Linda is now responsible for tuitions. That is a change since this. Before we even that was a change in our finance department. Linda is now handling tuitioning. She brought it to my attention on Wednesday morning that a neighboring tuitioning town shortchanged us, and within the hour, I was on the phone with the superintendent of that town, who understood exactly the perspective that I was coming from and assured me that the bill would be paid. I will follow up with Linda if need be, but given that prompt communication and prompt understanding that what that individual had written to Linda was incorrect, I'm very proud to report that this colleague of mine, who's a fellow Vermont superintendent, said, absolutely, we'll make sure that that bill is paid. So the most practical thing for a board member, for the public to know, is that we have a single dedicated individual who's following and tracking tuition, and that was done before we knew the details of the deficit. To date, Linda has brought me one concern around tuition, and we have addressed it directly. So while I don't know that that's written down in procedure in our either of our offices, that certainly is the way that I will handle it. And I can say, based on how thoughtful and careful the board has been to me in terms of my responsibility about tuition, it's very clear to me that this is an expectation of my role, that I hope I have proven I take incredibly seriously, and that it's something that I protect as part of the reality of serving this community as the superintendent of schools. Jody, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or Dean,
Yeah.
or Abby.
I just wanted to follow up to say that, you know, I'm with Brian on this 100% as well. I believe in 100% transparency and communication. I think that when things like this occur, I would like to be able to bring them to the finance committee and say, okay, hey guys, this is what's going on. What should be our next steps? What should we do? What's the follow-up? I want to be held accountable. I want them to be able to say, hey, Jody, where's that money from such and such? Whatever happened with that? That's what should be happening. That's absolutely what should be happening going forward. I want to bring it to the board. Everybody should know if we have money that we haven't received, they should know why and what's going on to prevent that and what we're doing to investigate it, what we're doing to get it. I mean, some of these we may have had to go to court over. That would have been a decision that we would have brought to the board and we could have decided. So that will definitely change going forward.
Eileen, I subscribe to the what did you know, when did you know it, and what did you do? Bonnie brought this to our attention. I met with Jody and Bonnie. We discussed it. We brought it to the finance committee, and now we're bringing it to you. So this kind of work, this process here is what you should expect of us. It's what the public should expect of us, because it's what we're proud to do, because we want to be as transparent as possible.
I had also recommended at the finance committee meeting that any potential deficits or potential non-payment areas just be brought to the full attention at the time of the audit so that we can know what we potentially have to carry forward. And it's an easy line, you know, this is what we know we've got that we're not going to get back. This is what we anticipate, and this is what's going to be done. So that year over year, there is follow through. You know, as you pointed out, Eileen, there's turnover. I won't be there next year, you know, and so it's important that there's consistency. And relying on institutional memory is not good enough.
It makes you all feel any better. During my younger years at the hotel, I paid rooms and meals tax for about 5 years on non-taxable accounts. And then I discovered it and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I asked the state for a refund. They only go back 3 years. And just to make sure they didn't send me too much money back, they introduced a full-blown audit on me just to reduce as much as possible. So it was I haven't made a mistake again. It was a learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely not, it's a learning experience for sure as a new board member, but I think it's the best course of action to get this back on the books.
I think the key, though, and I to Eileen's point, I think it's important that you have a procedure in place, you know, to avoid this kind of thing happening again.
Yeah, and it was noted again, as we look at the budget, whether or not, you know, we do need to look as a board at the finance office and not necessarily, like, obviously we've entrusted a good new finance director that I you know, unfortunately she's bringing this to us, but I'm glad that she is, in the spirit of transparency, so that we can rectify this, because yeah, that's not a hole that any family or any large institution wants to find themselves in, again, particularly as we. So do we feel comfortable as a board, from the member of the finance committee, for me to make this motion at this point? Can I do that, Mark?
Yeah, not right now for the motion, but you can certainly do that during the action items.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'm assuming that's the motion that Brian added in to.
Yes, please.
That is.
Okay,
Yeah, I have some language that was recommended by the audit.
Good, because I was trying to figure out the language. So
Okay, I got it. I have it down. I've got it.
So Jody, you might as well finish your Director of Finance report.
Absolutely. I did want to know, so the other thing on the audit that was noted is we did have findings this year, and I think we pretty much just discussed all the reasons behind that. Various things, as you can kind of see from what we've talked about, just not being as organized and not having the information at our fingertips, things like that. a lot of those are things that I seen right away coming in, and that we've already implemented a bunch of changes in the finance office. And other things, we're certainly going to follow the advice of the auditors on what we should do going forward. If anybody wants to take a look at those, we can certainly go over them. But again, it's basically everything that we just talked about, as far as just being transparent, and just the communication needs to be on point. There was definitely a lot of disorganization when I came in, and trying to find things has been very difficult. So it's much better now. And of course, I have my own way of doing things, and my own accounting system, and my own files. So I'm actually really excited to go through the audit again, believe it or not, because now I will know when Bonnie asks me for something, I will actually have an answer, like right off the tip of my tongue. I will know exactly what she's talking about. I will know exactly where to find it. And going through the process, I've actually been saving and documenting, and I already have a file folder put aside where I've been adding things. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I'm very much looking forward to working with Bonnie. I know that I can go to her with questions, and that I can ask her for advice if I'm unsure about something. And I think that that's going to be the key going forward, is just if I don't know something, I'm more than happy to reach out and figure it out. So I think that the audit coming up, and Bonnie, if you want to speak to that at all, but I do feel much more confident going forward. And I think that there shouldn't be findings in the future. And then, so if we're going to continue with the finance report, I figured after all of that, you'd all be sick of me. So I made it short and sweet. Expenditures, I did include an expenditure report in there. And it really looks like we are on track. I do feel like we will have that $52,000. And everything is looking good as far as having a surplus. We have spent over $500,000 in on COVID expenses. However, that's a quarter of it has already been recovered through the CRF grant, and the rest of it will be going through ESSER 1, and then future funds will be going through ESSER 2 and 3, which is a whole nother thing that we'll probably get into in the future. But lots of grant money coming our way, and not worrying about COVID costs. If there's something that we need, or something that students need, that staff needs, we are going to be able to get it. So that has been great, and it's been great not to have to worry about having what we need. So I'm really confident that we will have everything we need with that. So really, other than that, everything is going really well. We just had to get through the audit process and again, start with that clean slate and hopefully move forward bigger and better.
Any questions?
Go ahead,
Do we
Mark.
know what the ESSER 3 funds can cover?
Not yet. We're still waiting for guidance on construction for ESSER 2. No, the short answer is no.
Oof. All right.
Bonnie, before we move on, are you saying we're going to finish up this year with a surplus, or you anticipate we'll finish up with a surplus?
It's looking really good. It's looking really good. And that $52,000 was in there and set aside, and we have not touched it. So I'm at least confident about that.
All right. Thank you.
Any questions out there before we move on to the principal's report?
I have a question whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah, take it away, Todd.
Yeah, just because there's numbers, Dr. Rick will tell you numbers are not my strong point. Just want to make sure I got these written down right. So the deficit is a 2020 deficit of $241,000?
It's the end of the FY19 audit. So the FY19 audit ended fiscal year 19, June 30, 2019, and was completed this year. Should have been completed in the year 2020, but because of COVID, it's being completed in 2021.
Right.
But it's
Okay. So the deficit is not this year; it's for last year.
correct.
Okay, and this was uncovered by the audit, and the deficit was 241,000. What is the number of the problem is uncollected revenues.
Correct.
What's the number on how much in uncollected revenues? And then my next question would be, how does that $52,000 fit in there?
Okay, so the total in uncollected revenues is 179,605 and 35 cents.
Yeah.
The $52,000 was identified at the end of last year, and we had set aside that money to make sure that we could pay it during FY21.
Okay, and so is that $52,000? Was that also some form of uncollected revenue?
I'm going to defer to Bonnie on that. Bonnie, do you have a sense of the 52,593?
Let me pull out my file from 19 really quickly.
Thank you.
Well, while you do that, Brian, don't you mean this was a fiscal year 20 audit, not 19?
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. Yes, you're right. I apologize. That's right. Sorry.
But the bottom line is it's a deficit it's what we finished last year with, right? It's not this year.
Yeah.
The problem is last year.
Correct.
Yeah, you can see I didn't really do well in math class.
Okay. I'll walk you through it whenever, just like we always do. I'll walk you through it.
Yeah, no, you're great help. So I just, the 52,000, I'm not trying to get into the deep numbers, just trying to figure out if it's the same issue and problem. That's all. I mean, I don't really care where the deficit came from because sometimes they're a deficit, but if it's the same problem, that would be a factor.
Exactly.
I have to address it and be able to explain how this money is already there to cover this particular problem, and it's either a different problem or it's the same problem. That's kind of the level that I'm coming from. I ain't no accountant, that's for sure.
So I have my FY19 audit in front of me now. FY18 ended with a fund balance of about $7,000. FY19 had a general fund deficit for the year of just under 60,000. So at the end of FY19, there was an existing deficit of 52,593 that the board was aware of and built into the budget for FY21.
Right, but was that deficit due to uncollected revenues?
No,
that was for expenditures in excess of revenues during FY19.
Okay, so it's not the same problem. So the uncollected revenue problem is the 170 number that you gave me, Dr. Ricca.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
Okay, I got it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay, principals report.
All right, I'm flying solo tonight, so here we go. So we'll start with our goal number 1, which is under academic proficiency. We're just talking a little bit about a change in our math curriculum for next year. I'm going to admit up front that I have not been a part of many of the conversations on this one, so I don't have a lot of information about this new program. Jody, Elliot, and our math leadership team has spent a lot of time really looking at what they feel is best for our students. And so we're going to make a shift to illustrative math and away from Eureka for next school year. We will be doing that in partnership with the All Learners Network, which is some work that many of our math teachers are already undertaking, especially in our primary and intermediate grades. And we will start our year off next August with a couple of full days of in-service professional development work for all of our math teachers. Our consultants will be here throughout that time and then also throughout the school year, helping to really support this shift. It'll also be something that our academic support team is able to help support in our classrooms as well. So we're excited about the change and the opportunity that it will bring for some new and focused instruction in our classroom and some new learning opportunities for our students. Jumping down to safe and healthy schools, Lydia and Jody have been working on the family compact, and so they've been working with a focus group of staff and community members and parents to do that work so that we'll have a revised school and family compact out for the start of the 21-22 school year. The Healthy Schools team and Lydia and I have worked together to update our attendance procedure. We'll be sharing that with the rest of the leadership team soon so that we can roll that out for next year. Naturally, we know that this year has been a challenge attendance-wise just because of the many challenges associated with school and COVID this year. But we have really come to the conclusion that we need to be more clear on what our attendance expectations are and how we respond to those situations so that we can provide as much support to our families as possible and support making sure our students are at school as all the time, except for in those extreme circumstances when they can't be. So we'll continue to work on refining that, and then we'll be sharing it with leadership and with you all, and then eventually with our families when we return in August. Let's see. So the last bullet under this one is around our social emotional learning. So last year at the end of the school year, our school improvement leadership team determined that, kind of redetermined that responsive classroom is really our focus and what what we use as our social emotional learning approach for our grade levels. That morphs into developmental design at the middle level. And we will be working hard to make sure that our new and current staff are all trained in responsive classroom or developmental design. Fortunately, through interviews, most of our incoming staff has some degree of connection with those approaches already. And those who won't will be offered the opportunity to participate in classes this summer or through the next school year, and then also provided support here in the building. And let's see. Kind of on the heels of that, as I mentioned, our new staff. I know that in a little bit we're going to talk about our new staff who are being approved tonight by the school board. Just a quick update. I think that we're in a position where we have, I am straight from my report a little bit too, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. We have pretty well wrapped up most of our interviews. We've done a ton. We've met a lot of incredible educators that have at our school. And I think that we are nearing the point where we are close to being fully staffed, minus a couple of positions for next school year, which is a really good feeling considering that we haven't even made it to the beginning of June yet. So you'll hear about a few of those. I know that their resumes are in the board packet tonight, along with the ones that were approved last time. I know that Lydia and I and the rest of the leadership team are really excited about the folks who are going to be joining them. And last but not least, just an update on 8th grade graduation. We realized that we haven't spoken much about this recently, and it is rapidly approaching. So 8th grade graduation will be in person this year and outside on June 9th at 6 o'clock. It'll be held out back. Graduates, the leadership team, and our staff will sit up on top of the hill, and our families will have designated spots that will be mapped out on the field and the basketball court. That will hold, each spot will hold about 6. We're asking for families to bring no more than six people to graduation. First come, first serve as to locations. We're not giving out tickets for seating people. They're just going to be able to come and find the spot where they can see. And we will be live streaming this. So if people are sitting in a spot where they can't see as well or are at home, they'll have access to the live stream. Excuse me. We are working out all those technology details to the best of our ability, so it will be able to be heard and broadcast so that everybody's able to participate and see their graduates, hear their graduates when they're up on top of the hill. Families are asked to bring their own seating. We're not able to provide seating out in the field, so lawn chairs, blanket to sit on, whatever makes the most sense. And I think that's it. There is not a reception or anything after graduation this year, just because we're continuing to follow the COVID guidelines, whatever they might be by the time June 9th rolls around. I don't know if I said it, but if it happens to rain on June 9th, we will have graduation on Friday night on June 11th, same time, same place. Hopefully dry if it was rainy on Wednesday. I think that's it. Any questions for me?
Maybe I can redirect. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dean.
Maybe I can redirect this, and maybe Carl can fill in, because you said you didn't have much information on why we're switching from Eureka Math to this new system. Carl, do you have any sense for that?
So I have not been closely involved with the math team's discussion, so I'm not the best person to talk to about that. But I am excited. I have looked at the program and I'm excited about it. And I think it's really going to be a benefit to our students. I've had a chance to, so I'm in my 4th year teaching math. I've had a chance to look at Eureka. There's a lot about it that I found frustrating, and I'm
We lost him.
We lost Carl there a little bit.
I can speak if you would like. I'm on the math leadership team, and I actually popped on just to hear about the new hires for the middle school because of Jacob being part of the middle school. So I wasn't planning on talking about the new program, but Dean, we've been obviously last year we were not able to meet as a math leadership team. And then this year we met just a few times via Zoom. So Jody really would be the one to speak more to the reasons, but I do know that the program really lines up with the high leverage concepts that we're really like focusing on for our students to really excel and be able to move like vertical as far as like going, excelling, meeting the Common Core standards, meeting our curriculum, as well as like Jeremy was talking about the All Learners Network. They've been really working closely with our teachers in this school for the past several years, especially this year. Our teachers were given the choice to focus on math or literacy, and those who chose to focus on math, we met with the people from the All Learners Network once or twice a month for our PD opportunities. Is still there? Okay. And I know that Jody was saying that they highly recommend this program. And like Carl said, I'm not incredibly familiar with the program. I know that it does match up with what we have been teaching with Engage or Eureka. But I think it's really kind of focuses more on those like high leverage concepts that really is needed to push our students forward and kind of focus on less gaps. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
Does it go K through 8?
It does.
Okay,
yes.
So it's a full.
Yeah, it does. And like I said, the women who have been, focusing on doing the All Learners Network, the 2 or 3, Sandy Stanhope is one of them. They really speak highly of it, and I believe the math leadership team is just really, trusting that their expertise, as on the topic of math. I mean, they're very well known through the country, these women who've been working in our school this year and last year.
And then my last question would just be, are we transitioning piecemeal or are we transitioning wholesale? I'm hoping your answer is wholesale.
Yes, so we are going to completely make that shift as a whole school. Originally, Jody, we had talked about piloting it, and that topic was brought up in one of our math leadership team Zooms, and then it was no longer brought up again. And Jody said, we're doing it as a whole school. We're not going to pilot it. So everyone's going to get the same training. As far as having PD throughout the year for just if you chose to do, for example, like teaching first grade, I do math and literacy. So my full first grade team, I chose to focus this year on math. So next year, everybody is going to be focusing on this new program, math, and getting that PD from these women who are coming from All Learners Network. So the whole school is going to jump in, and I actually am really excited about it. It looks great.
Am I hearing correctly that it sounds like some of the lower school has had more experience with the All Learners Network, and that not as much interaction has happened at the upper level before now?
So the All Learners work that they've been doing here this year has been through 5th grade and did not go through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
So is there going to be, and I don't,
the work that we're doing next year and the support of the All Learners will go through middle school. So it won't continue just at the same grade levels where it has been. It will be support that's school wide. And
support will be provided tiered wise in terms of where different groups are, like, meeting people where they are.
Yes.
And I like I said, I'm not completely at all familiar with the new program that we're going to jump into. I do think though that there are a lot of things that most people who are teaching math will be able to quickly make that connection with, because the Engage or Eureka, that both this same program, different names. We've been doing that since I've been at the school, almost 8 years. So I believe that, there are definitely some similarities that teachers will be able to take from.
Thanks, Lisa. I did want to, just kind of make a point, and I appreciate Lisa and Jeremy filling in the blanks, but as you said, you don't have all the pieces. I think this is, again, why I'd love to see our curriculum coordinator on here with some regularity, so we could ask these questions and get the answers to them. And I think maybe what we need to do, and it's just a suggestion, I know it's out of place, but maybe it would be good to have her come on and present where we're going for next year so that the community knows where they're going.
Can I jump in real quickly? I think a couple of things, Dean. I was going to suggest one, that once we as a staff have had the opportunity to become more knowledgeable of illustrative and what that looks like for us as a school, that then some fraction of either the math leadership team or Lydia and I or some group presents to you all in the fall when we have a little bit more information. And I also think that as we move forward with our decision making around where we are going as a school, curriculum wise and otherwise, that Lydia and I can do a better job of building that into our monthly principals reports. I think that Brian and we have discussed before, making our principals reports a little bit more meaningful and effective as far as communicating some of the bigger things that are going on. And that might be a good opportunity to build some of that in, so that we're sharing with you sort of the trajectory that we're on and where we are within that, so that those updates are a little bit more timely and meaningful. And to be totally candid, this was not the year to try to do that, but I think we are all looking forward to a hard reset here in a few weeks and hitting the ground more like ourselves when we come back in August, so that we're able to really get back to that kind of work.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Dean, I do want to add too that, like I said, I'm not completely familiar with the program, but I do know as the math leadership being on the math leadership team, like our mission and our goals aren't changing, right? So we still have those standards that we are pushing every math teacher, classroom teacher to meet, those high leverage concepts of what does every first grader absolutely need to know before they leave first grade? What does every third grader need to know? So, although we are changing programs, we're not changing those like standards that, we're really pushing hard on. And as one who teaches math to students who come in all levels, I'm actually really excited to change our program to experience something a little bit different. As you know, there's so many kids who have, they're coming in on so many different levels. So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this, but I do hear you. It would be nice to hear a little bit more about it, but I think because it's such a new thing that we'll be able to learn and let you know.
Right. And I echo Dean's thoughts here in that we really appreciate what people are presenting to us and telling us. And it isn't our job to run the district, but if our name is attached to it being run well, you know, having the information from the people who are making those decisions is really helpful in terms of like giving us statistics that back it up. And like, I'm a math teacher, and I love some of the teaching strategies that Learners Network uses, right? Like, it's amazing. And I'm sitting here and just that experience that I have for my own profession. But like, we appreciate everything that's being told to us right now.
Well, I'm glad, but honestly, I really didn't expect to talk about this, but I really was just excited to hear about the new math or the new middle school team. So hopefully I did that program justice.
Thank you. Thanks for your guest appearance, Lisa.
Thank you.
In terms of the staffing, Jeremy, what are the positions that we still need to fill?
So we have a behavior specialist, or two positions, I believe, two behavior specialist positions that are opened up in the lower school. So Lydia is working on filling those. And we have an opening for a full-time speech and language pathologist that has been posted for quite a while. And we are, like all schools, struggling to find anybody who is interested. So if you happen to know an SLP, my wife not counted, you should send them our way. Because I'm sure Kara would be interested in talking to them.
And before we blow past that, we have to give humongous praise to Jeremy and Lydia. I wish Lydia was on the call to hear this as well, although we did celebrate this at the leadership team this morning. As the guy who gets to be the last stop before the finalists get their packets into the board, I have heard some of the best answers to my first question when I interview teaching candidates, which is something to the effect of, besides the fact that you're qualified for this position, and besides the fact that we have an opening in St. Johnsbury, why do you want to come work for us? To say that I've been humbled by the intentionality of people choosing to work in our district is an understatement. Mark says during every discussion session that it's his job to make sure that we are moving our community's teachers higher up in the region in terms of salary. And thanks to our generous community this year, we are able to put Mark's money where the mouth is and the board's money where the mouth is. And it is very, very humbling to listen to people say, I want to come to your district because of this, because I like how you are treating your employees, because I like how you are messaging the COVID crisis, because I like how people are telling me they feel when they work in your district. To Eileen's point, to Dean's point, to Lisa's point, we're going to get the content right. But in the same way that Eileen knows that good students remember you not just for the content, but how you make them feel, I feel that sense of responsibility as the employer on your behalf for this district. And people are coming here and choosing to come here when we have openings because of how we're making them feel. And that goes right into the lap of Mr. Ross, and that goes right into the lap of Ms. Cochran, who, despite a pandemic, and despite a lot of people making a choice to not work next year or to work closer to where they live, or making essentially what we're seeing is a pandemic choice, people are coming to us because of the culture of our school building. And so I couldn't let that go without giving a lot of praise to Jeremy and to Lydia and to the board for supporting all of this. And, I see Carl's there, at least, it's a total team effort, but the culture is what is drawing people to our building. And that's really something for us to celebrate and be proud of.
All right, so moving on, federal title funds.
So this is something that has to be done every year. It's an annual step that the board has to take to approve all of our use of federal funds. So what I thought I would do is work with Jody Elliott to give you a sense of how we use Title I, Title IIA, and Title IVA funds. I don't want to read it all to you. Suffice it to say that we follow the prescriptions of the Federal Department of Education, but it is an annual action step that the board has to take to allow us to use federal funds in the manner that is prescribed by the Federal Department of Education. So if there are specific questions about anything that I've written, I would be happy to do my best to answer more about them. If not, I would look forward to a board action item approving our use of federal funds for the 2021-2022 school year. And this, just to be clear, this is just those title funds. This is not ESSER. This is not, these are just specifically to the consolidated federal program grant funds, Title I, Title IIA, and Title IVA.
All right. We can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of additions as requested by Dean. Update on Kiwanis and some ESSER funds academic arm comments.
So, Dean, we have not heard back from Kiwanis yet. I did get an email from one of their members saying that I should hear from Morris Shalou in the next couple of days. I haven't as of this afternoon, so I will reach out again to him. We're ready. I think they were, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, they were just confirming their insurance liability coverage. Is that correct?
They had to get a new insurance company, I believe.
Correct.
They said.
There you go. Correct. And in terms of the academics for ESSER, the principals are beginning their listening tour to ask students what they want and need for next year. We finalized the draft of a survey that's going to go out to our faculty and staff, all of our employees. The next step from there is the leadership team will sort of gather that data, and we've set a date for that for Monday, June 7th. We're going to give people over a week to do it through the Memorial Day weekend. We'll have the surveys due back by next Friday. We will then reconvene the Reigniting Task Force to help us sort some of that into the buckets that they belong in. And then we will put out surveys to our families and to our communities to help us prioritize the use of funds for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Specifically in terms of academics, we don't have a sense of that yet. I know we will be using assessments to help gauge where we are, but we haven't taken any concrete steps yet. I can also share with you, let me just look back at an email that I sent to Eileen, because I know that dovetails into what you are asking about. And the school improvement leadership team looked at both state and local data that we had on hand. Both data sets showed that approximately 50% of our students are meeting proficiency in reading and math. Among those, our historically marginalized students are not experiencing enough growth to close that achievement gap. We are already identified as an equity school by the Agency of Education because these groups consistently underperform in comparison to their peers. The document that was shared electronically with the SILT team posed the overall question of how can we ensure all students reach academic proficiency and feel success? And brainstorming buckets included climate, culture, mindset, belief, staff expertise, leadership, data literacy, proficiencies, student learning outcomes, and the time and schedule. So that's how they created that work product. And that's how we plan to go forward with the academic arm of ESSER.
I may have asked this wrong then. What I was looking for was, and I wasn't at the meeting, so I'm going by the presentation, but we presented, there was attendance, right? What was
student engagement, truancy,
right? And then there was the academic arm. What was the conclusion of the academic arm evaluation?
Right. So we only have a basic needs assessment. We have not finalized that. We're going to use the survey data that's going out now, and in the next couple of weeks to address that. What the group that completed the needs assessment said, I'll just read it again. We still have 50% of our students meeting proficiency in reading and math.
All right. And how does that compare to previous years?
That I don't have in front of me.
Okay. So, because I thought that was kind of, and maybe again, I wasn't at the meeting, but I thought that was kind of the point, was to kind of compare where we were compared to where we expected to be. Was I wrong?
Well, from the AOE's perspective, we're just supposed to look at this year by itself in terms of recovery, but we're going to do more than just that. And we're as you know, not calling it recovery. We're going to try to meet our kiddos where they're at and try to move forward from there. That's the goal.
And again, and I know this is kind of nitty gritty stuff that doesn't really pertain to me, but I'm just curious, what's the survey looking at? I mean, what kind of questions are being asked on it?
Mr. Ross could talk about what he's going to ask in terms of the listening tour. We're asking our adults what they want and need in order to serve their students better next year, and then what they want and need in order to have a better year in terms of their overall health next year. So we're asking both of our adults.
Okay.
Do you want me to respond to that too? Yeah. I would say that essentially the questions that we're asking our students are similarly aligned to what Brian just said, however, in a student-friendly way, which Lydia and I are meeting on Wednesday or soon this week to make sure that we're aligned with what we're asking and asking in a way that makes sense for our kids. Obviously, we need to phrase those questions in a way that makes sense for a 7, 8, 9-year-old versus a 12, 13-year-old, but get that information that we're looking for so we have that to use as we think about next steps. That answer your question.
Any other questions, Dean? Nothing? Okay. Shall we move on to action items?
Mark, can I make a suggestion that you do the deficit note first? Because if you do the deficit note first, the FY20 audit can then be approved with the footnote of the deficit note. The reason you see a draft in the board packet is because in order to close the audit, the auditors must note how the deficit is going to be made up. So if the board takes action and approves some forward motion on the deficit note, Linda can note that as a board motion in action, and you can then approve the draft audit as it's written, and we can send that action item as a motion to the auditor, and that will close out our FY20 audit.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so Abby, would you like to read the motion for the deficit note?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to approve obtaining bids from 3 local banks for 3-year deficit reduction note in the amount of no more than $241,018 to recover the deficit fund balance in the general fund at June 30, 2020.
Boom.
Oh. All right. So would anybody like to agree to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Questions, comments from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. So now I can make a motion to approve the FY20 audit, that's the motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now I'd like to make a motion to approve our use of the federal title funds for the fiscal year 2022 school year.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? There we go. So there was one resignation, right?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resignation of Marion Hamilton as enclosed in our board packet with regret and gratitude for her service at St. Johnsbury.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and finally, I'd like to make a motion to approve of the teacher nominations as enclosed in our board packet.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nothing, all right. So that is it on the motions. Public comment section. Do we have public comment this evening?
It's Carl. I just wanted to echo what some other folks have already said. So we're coming to the end of the school year. It's been a really interesting school year. I've learned a lot about instruction that I plan to take forward. And I feel like we've met the moment. And there's enough gas in the tank. We're going to get there. We're going to make the end of the school year meaningful. I'm really excited to be looking forward to working with colleagues in a new way. I'm super excited to work with the teachers that we have coming on board. It's really exciting. I was walking out with a second grade teacher today talking about her new colleague and just someone whose resume I'd reviewed and I'd had a chance to talk with her. And I just knew that we were getting someone that was a real seasoned teacher with a lot to give to our kids. That's on top of all of the staff that are coming back, have signed their contracts for next year. As a parent, I'm just so grateful to the quality of the care that my own children are receiving. And it's a joy to work with my colleagues. We have summer opportunities for the kids that look really cool. We have a bunch of teachers who are jumping in on opportunities to keep the growth happening. And through the summer, we just need to keep as many kids as possible involved in these opportunities. And I want to just take this moment as we're sort of looking towards, I know we're not out of the woods yet, but I really want to express my gratitude to everyone for everything that went into making the school year a success. It's been a real exciting and joyful year for me. So thank you.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, it was. I think that the light is at the end of the tunnel. I hope. And I look forward to having meetings in person once again.
Indeed.
I would definitely echo Carl's words as far as working in our school. I've just been so incredibly impressed with the amount of flexibility and teamwork and just the students just showing such resiliency and just they're really working so hard under these crazy circumstances, and I could not be prouder, especially of my first grade crew. But just I I can be the first one to admit that I was very hesitant and somewhat skeptical of how it was going to go teaching this year, and very nervous, but it has been just a really, really fulfilling year for me as a first grade teacher. And I'm just really excited to head back in the fall. Obviously have a nice break this summer, but head back and really, really looking forward to a solid middle school team, especially since our son is going to be in 8th grade. So kudos to Jeremy and Lydia and the admin team who've worked really hard to make that happen.
Great. All right. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn at 7:19 p.m. Anybody? Don't be bashful.
So moved.
All right. Second. We have a second?
I mean, I guess I'll second if I didn't move. So sure.
And all in favor?
Aye.